I'll first introduce myself. I'm Naomi, and I'm the fashion manager for Friend of the Earth certification. Friend of the Earth is a sustainable certification organization that certifies sustainable brands and textiles, which we go through the textiles of origin, how they pay their workers, and everything in general. So we're a certification body, and we start. Dr. Benai, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Dr. Vinay Kumar Chaudhary. I am the Regional Technical Lead for Asia Pacific, and also I am the Global Chair for Control Union Global Textile Team. And I am also the Chairman for Control Union India. So with these short introductions, I have experience with textile certification and sustainable certification over 25 years. My PhD in agriculture, chemistry and soil science. And I have been with these industries writing almost more than 30 standards, which is today currently running with various industries in sustainability. This is in short about me.
So Marina, please, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me on this webinar. I am a sustainability consultant. I'm also a professor of sustainable fashion in many different universities in Italy and abroad. I am country coordinator of a movement called Fashion Revolution that deals mostly with social sustainability, talking about living wage. And I am an author. I wrote a book called The Revolution Starts from Your Closet, and my new book is about to be published. So I concentrate on bringing knowledge and education to younger people about sustainability and how to be sustainable consumers.
Okay, so that's great, Marina. It's a pleasure to have you here because, like, I'm a fan base for Fashion Revolution as well, and most of your works. So to begin, I'll just start with the questions. I'll start with you, Marina. So the role of design, since you're in the education side, so the role of design education in embedding social responsibility. How do you think we can embed social responsibility in schools now, so the students are aware about social responsibility from the start?
It's very, very important to educate the young minds from the very beginning. I think university is already almost too late. I think in Europe, for example, in Scandinavian countries, they already talk about the SDGs in kindergarten, which means that children grow up with a more conscious mind, and this way they become more conscious creators and consumers as they grow up. But in Italy, for example, we do what we can. Speaking about, again, Fashion Revolution, together with other 60 NGOs, we put together a shadow policy that we gave to the European Parliament in 2019. And in 2022, the European Parliament published the new strategy for sustainable textile. And this is very important because when you said about design, for example, the first rule of this legislation is eco-design, mandatory eco-design. So it's extremely important in what I teach to let young designers know exactly what eco-design means, also what circularity is all about, and how they can become more conscious designers and creators, thinking about what will happen at the end of the life of the products that they design, and how to make them so that in their birth and during their lifespan, they are more sustainable and less impactful to the environment. So, Dr. Binay, are you designing new regulations for the textile industry?
Yes. So basically, what has happened, there is a shift in sustainability thinking. And as you said, that SDG is a basic platform. So sustainable development goals with a lot of emphasis all the United Nations has given, and people are looking up the impact analysis, which is more important to understand. So if you look to the brands, there is a different brand perspectives and sustainability. You look to a consumer, there is a consumer perspectives, and there are stakeholders. So whether it is food, fiber, or shelter and cloth, the understanding is clearly visible. So I
Yes.
think sustainability is not by choice. It is our life, and it is our concern for the global warming, climate change, and it is concern for everybody. So if I start looking into 1950s, then the world population was confined to 2.5 billion, and
Yeah.
today the world population is something 8.4 or plus billion people. And looking to the earth is very typical. We have 70% water, and only 30% is distributed for human being, animal, and plants, and
Yes.
microbes and other climate factors are part of this ecosystem. So looking to this, when the human population start exploding, and you have a lot of revolution started, so that to increase the productivity, to feed the people, to have a lot of basic needs like food, cloth, shelter. And with this pressure on the earth, people started thinking that what we did, the chemicals that we start in the morning when you get up from the bed, you start with a toothbrush and few chemicals on your body, and when you go to the bed also you start with a lot of chemicals. So are we doing right? But it has been dispensable for us in textile sector. Without a color, now the consumer will not face that whether the design is required and the color to the fashion is required. So now
Yeah.
people are looking for eco fashions, eco colors. Brands are looking based on the consumers liking. So if you look to that, I think one of the questions that has been sent by Naomi and the team is that how sustainability has been embedded with the corporate social responsibility, and
Yeah.
also how it has been embedded to stakeholders. So if you look very closely, that consumers are more aware about what the product they use, and consumers are aware about the labels that has been carried out. So today, as you said, that legislation has become a part of the tone of the government system to follow it. And legislation is a guaranteed system that everybody, you, me, and buyers, stakeholders has to follow it. So now, if you look into US, the New York Fashion Act, or you talk about the Europe, you have a digital product passport, CSDD, UDR, and green claim initiatives. So these are all coming one by one with a lot of EU regulations coming in. So we need to look into the regulations and those perspectives of sustainability. So we cannot have a greenwashing in the future, and we may not have a claim through a certification system. Now with the AI introductions, we look for a bright futures. So I think sustainability will be part of our ecosystem. So people will look into the sustainability in more closer way, and some people invest money on sustainability. So when you invest money on terms of sustainability improvement, so earlier, if you look to the organic, it is just 1% on the business scale. And if you look to the real sustainability, which has got indices or indication or indexation, then that comes around 4 to 5%. And if you look to the sustainability at broad, it is 40 to 60%. So you have got 300,000 definitions in Google. People are using, but the basics of sustainability lies with people, product, profit, or social, environmental, and economic aspect. I think the education that you have already given, Marina, is a very important tool, and it should be to a consumer, it should be a stakeholders to how sustainability will be affecting to our ecosystem, and how it could be part for our development to protect our climate change and to give our day-to-day activities.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Binay.
Hi, so Martina, sorry, I'm just having some technical issues. So, Martina, from your perspective, how can the fashion industry move beyond tick box sustainability and truly integrate human rights and gender equality into the core of their business models?
Thank you so much. Morning, evening. It's a pleasure to meet you all, despite some tech challenges, but I think it's normal because, well, we have flooding and disaster in the whole Italy, where part of us are. So it could happen, unfortunately, but here we are, so gladly. Well, how to avoid and go beyond the ticking boxing exercise? With a strong and genuine commitment, I would say, first of all, from the head of the companies of the brand, and secondly, focusing strategies on the so-called due diligence. I mean, before launching a new collection, products, or business, we're supposed to identify potential, but also current human rights and environmental impacts, and deal with these seizing impacts, minimizing impacts. So the ticking boxing exercise is we can go beyond with the due diligence. This means that introducing, let's say, specific material in my new collection that is no water intensive doesn't mean be sustainable. We're supposed to analyze the entire life cycle of that product, the value chain, and map all impacts, both environmental and both social, and then design specific strategies related to the product or the main activities of the company. So is a state of mind, and is an ongoing process that is always a challenge to find a solution, monitoring and implementing it.
So with what you said, what would you think is the best way of brands communicating this? What if they have like all this embedded in their companies? What would be the best way to communicate this to their consumers?
Being sincere, for example, in lots of companies, it's very hard to find where their supply chain come from. And supporting companies in developing sustainability strategies, I must confess and share with you that some of them doesn't know where the supply chain is exactly, or they say that they face difficulties in achieve to those information. I think transparency is always the key, or at least saying that we are starting mapping our supply chain. We are investigating, talking with our supply chain to understand the situation. So better to be sincere and say that you are on ongoing this process. You are trying to start, trying to improve, and not avoiding communicating nor inventing content on this. So being sincere is very important.
Which means that, in other words, certifications could actually help in this process. With the new EU digital passport policy, this would actually help most companies.
Yeah, I mean, European Union legislation approach is helpful in order to improve our efforts. But in Italian, we used to say, fatta la legge, trovato l'inganno. When there is a new law, sometimes we can try to avoid the law, being compliant, but not really full transparent. So beyond being compliant, we're supposed to be committed for real. And if it's a company is not committed for real, gladly we have NGOs and civil society advocating, watching, and pushing for a real commitment. So the European legislation is a good ally, even if in the last year we saw the omnibus package pushing for simplification in the name of saving competition. And so we can't just rely on compliance. We should share values, and engage people with a true and genuine commitment to go beyond compliance.
Okay. Thank you, Martina. So, Marina, I have a question for you. So,
Yes.
what role can international frameworks like the SDG and the EU law play in pushing fashion companies to take responsibility and accounting?
I think they're very important laws, especially like I was mentioning before, the mandatory eco-design and also the EPR, extended producer responsibility. I think a lot of companies are starting to really realize that they have to step up and take care of these aspects, whereas before they never really thought about it. Also, the digital passport of each garment, I think it's going to be a very important tool that will give customers the knowledge to understand whether they really want to buy that garment or not. Because like you were saying before, or Martina was saying, the very important thing is to have the information. Because I'm just going to mention something. Fashion Revolution Germany did a very interesting social experiment years ago. They built a fake vending machine for T-shirts and put it in Alexanderplatz. So these T-shirts cost €2, and a lot of people were, trying to get their T-shirt, put it in their size, and then as soon as they put the money in, a video would start, and you would see the person who sewed and put together the T-shirt, and they say, meet Aisha. She works 18 hours. She only makes $3 a day. Do you still want to buy your €2 T-shirt, or you want to donate it to Fashion Revolution? So you see a lot of people donating. And then what I like the most about this experiment is that the final claim says people care when they know. And this is the nuts of everything, because if you don't know, you can't care. So education, information are essential. This is why the digital passport is so important, because as a customer, if I do get the information, then I can't pretend not to know, and I have to make a conscious decision. So yes to education, yes to communication, and transparency. Again, Fashion Revolution, not to mention it too many times, but we've made something called the Transparency Index, which for years we sent questions to very important brands about where they were produced, how were the people treated, was a living wage being paid, etc., etc. And according to how many of these questions they would answer, they would have like a place in our index. We also had to explain to people that transparency doesn't necessarily mean sustainability. But without transparency, you cannot understand whether a brand is sustainable or not. So these are all very, very important aspects.
Okay, you're right, because you could be transparent and still not communicate how much you pay your workers. So it's
yeah, or communicate that you pay them very badly, so you have answered the question, but you also declared that you're not sustainable.
yeah, so it's a two-act sword.
Yes,
in other words. Okay,
exactly.
So for Dr. Benai, how has supply chain management and fair trade approach taken into account when sustainable products are in the consumer basket?
If you look to the supply chain of textile, so it is a very long and short supply chain. So there are countries where there are composite approach. So you give the cotton or you give the fiber and you get the finished product. So everything, spinning, knitting, weaving, dyeing, everything happens in one floor. So it is very easy to have to look into those basket of a consumer at a very short time and very short span of life. However, there are countries where the supply chain is long. So each segment is getting different, and those supply chains are quite critical to observe into that. So true price of a product is important to understand. So many times what happened, best quality at the least price. So it's consumers' behavior, and to match this consumer behavior, so many times buyers and supply chain partners work on this. But it is a contradictory statement to talk about the best quality at least price, unless you have some technology or some kind of production that happens. So we always see there must be a very transparency, as you said, that transparency and trust is one of the building approach. And as you said that the legislation is required, a digital product passport means each ingredient is traceable, and somebody can be traced through a digital mechanism like blockchain technology. Somebody can talk about isotope technologies to know the center of origin. Somebody can talk about tracer techniques where tracers are used to look into that. So there are many ways to look the future, because the technology are getting sharp, and the contaminants or the product content with technology is very, very high. Take example of pesticide residues. Today, European Union can talk about 1,000 plus pesticides, whether it is organochlorine, organophosphorus, synthetic pyrethrates, any kind of contaminants, or any kind of RSL, restricted substances list, whether it's a banned amine or formaldehyde or EDTA or AOX. So these are all possible by technology to detect. So in such cases, a revolutionary approach, you do not produce, you also test. You do not do, you also trace. So there are many approaches where costs are involved. So all cost goes to a basket where consumer is there, because every supply chain needs a profit. So if your tier one approach is there, means the finished product is achieved by the buyers, and buyers give to consumers. So that is a very short approach that buyers always look to work with tier one. But nowadays, looking to the traceability legislation, looking to the supply chain transparency, so the buyer has started working with where is the fabric is coming from, where is the yarn is coming, where is the fiber is coming, and if it is a recycle, is it coming from ocean, is it coming from the garbage collectors, is it coming from the municipality where the works are there. So people would like to trace the supply chain and more work closely with the supply chain. So you will have a lot of ecosphere where there are a lot of challenges will come. So consumer basket is always how it looks like, that it has a fashionable garment, there is a story, there is a traceability behind in place, and he is comply with the regulations that the importing country is doing. So that's we look as a consumer basket.
So with this, what you said, we have a long chain for the final consumers to get the clothes, the long chain. So in this long chain, do you think that each workers are actually paid appropriately, and would this actually affect the final cost for the consumers? Because of this is a long process with different aspects.
Yes.
So do we think that the workers are actually paid properly in this long process?
This is a very good question, Naomi, and I don't want to talk diplomatically to answer that. It's very, very easy that for every product, there is a true price. I clearly told what is the fiber price is grown by a farmer. So every true price, if you calculate, so for a garment or for a final product or home textile or any kind of product, there is a true price. Means if I produce with natural effect or without any pressure, I produce myself with ethical way of doing a production, there is a price. However, if I go below the price, I put pressure on the supply chain, whether it's a technical pressure, whether it is a social pressure, or is an environmental pressure, right? So these pressure have deviated to the supply chain when there is a pressure on pricing with a good quality or with a good approach. So this makes a lot of deviation in the pressure in the supply chain. However, if the price is well paid, I think you will have some kind of difference. Certification, I always tell, is a verification process. And any kind of check that you put in the supply chain, they're not into 365 days or 24 hours with the supply chain. So they give based on a sampling. And if the sampling is quite close to 99%, then you see the results is right or wrong, or there is a pressure in the supply chain, or there is something that you can detect. But most of the time, we look that there is a very simple process in the supply chain, and everybody work with the due diligence with the cultural effect. Sometimes take example of social. Somebody is talking that, are you working for 8 hours? So as per the ILO laws, and you should have 1 day off, weekly off, and you should work certain hours, which is 60 hours, 48 plus 12 hours overtime. But if you look to that, somebody interpret that, what is my lunch hours? What is my tea hours? What is my total changing of the dress and making this work hours? So how you interpret that? Is it ethical process or an unethical process? I think the standards are laid to protect the workers. Standards are laid to protect the product behavior, what consumer is labeled to get that product, and that is in place. But if there is an unethical or a process that harmful the supply chain, what we claim it, I think is a deviation in the supply chain.
Okay. So I have a question. Thank you, Dr. Benai. So I have a question for Martina. So what role can international frameworks like the SDG and upcoming EU regulation play in pushing the fashion companies to take accountability?
Thank you so much, Naomi. As I mentioned before, I think that international frameworks are very important for accelerating sustainability in all sectors, including the fashion and textile ones. After a year of not binding laws and technically guiding principles and frameworks that try to accelerate the commitment of companies, we saw a switch, especially from the European Union, toward a mandatory approach. And after the delivery of the Green Deal, the delivery of a series of regulations and directives on sustainability, like the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive or the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. In particular, my organization, Human Rights International Corner, is part of a coalition of Italian NGOs working under the coordination and the umbrella of the European Coalition for Corporate Justice, for pushing an ambitious CSR DDD, so due diligence directive on human rights and the environment. I must confess that I saw benefits from the switching from not binding to binding in the last 5 years in accelerating the interest and the commitment of companies, despite the fact of entering in the perimeter of a specific directive or not, because even if you are out of compliance, maybe your competitor are in, and so some companies decided to accelerate some reporting, some process of impact assessment on human rights in the environment, and so on. So I saw benefits from switching to this mandatory approach. As activists and as Human Rights International Corner, we are quite, let's say, worried about the simplification that the European Union is doing recently this year. also after some pressures from the international community of business of make things simpler at the European Union. So from one hand, I recognize the benefit and I would open for a more ambitious approach. To the other hand, I'm not surprised, but a little bit sorry about this simplification approach. And to the other hand, I must say that we saw also companies in other area of the world, like Asia or China, for example, start creating a binding framework. So I really hope the European Union will maintain the direction of the Green Deal, will maintain its pioneeristic approach on sustainability, both from an environmental point of view, but also from a human rights point of view, because the due diligence directive is quite new, but I started working on it with Amnesty in 2009, so it is a little bit that we talk about this due diligence. And I recognize the positive influence, and I would like to encourage officially the European Union and other institutional stakeholders on no go back on this, and on the fact that we do not need to sacrifice human rights and environmental protection for competitiveness, because we saw that green is green. In other cases, in lots of cases, from one end to the other hand, there is no absolutely developing economic development without human rights protection. So I really hope that European Union will change its mind and continue being pioneeristic on this, because I really recognize their influence, their approach as an accelerator for a more responsible business.
Martina, thanks for this, because I actually didn't realize they've actually simplified it. I thought it was still the same.
No, they modify the perimeter, for example. After delivering a directive on due diligence, and due diligence, for those that are listening to us and are not so familiar with, due diligence means identify human rights, environmental impacts, and then managing, seizing, minimizing them. Was something very pioneeristic from the European Union point of view. And they, with the new directive, the first idea was to make companies accountable, responsible for paying in case of violations. After delivering the directive, there was the omnibus packaging, and we didn't have the time for welcoming in our European member states the directive that they stop and change the rules after lots of lobbying pressure. So it's the first time in the history of the European Union that they changed their mind like this, and is a risk. For example, if you oblige big companies going on due diligence until tier one, is no sense of having a due diligence law for Italian companies. So the first idea was ambitious but good. Obviously, a directive that was the compromise among different stakeholders. The simplification is putting at risk human rights protection that occur after tier one, and do not make companies accountable. So we need to continue pushing on it. That is very important.
Okay, thank you so much, Martina. So Marina, I have a question for you. Currently, you're teaching a school. So how do you think your students are responding to the global changes in terms of fair labor and environmental situations in the fashion industry?
Oh, I noticed two kinds of approaches. There are certain students that are very interested and they're quite concerned. And so they become very passionate about the whole situation. And if they do their own collection, they implement a lot of sustainable practices. Unfortunately, at least in Italy, the majority is like doing what the ostriches do, which it's hiding the head in the sand, thinking that they're actually hiding the whole body, not realizing that their behind is exposed for a big kick. So it's really important to shake them up. And I noticed also that videos and films are the things that impress them the most. My dear friend Matteo Ward just did a series of documentaries in different places around the world where basically fashion has done terrible damages. And because he's a young man and they can relate to him, when I show his videos, I can see something clicking. I can see them finally relating. Because sometimes, especially when you talk about social sustainability, we campaigned for a whole year for something called Good Clothes, Fair Pay, which was we tried to get an extra law passed for sustainable, socially sustainable practices. And a lot of people, when you would go and ask them to sign this petition, they would like say, but who cares? They're in Bangladesh. That doesn't touch me. And so there's a lot of selfishness. There's a lot of not relating because it's so far away, the problem. And sometimes it's so big that the kids don't think they can actually do something about it. So you have to keep them involved. What I did during that campaign, I explained that it's not just about the garment workers in Bangladesh, but it's also about a young student who comes out of university where his or her parents spent a lot of money to get them a degree. And especially in Italy, they go and look for work and all they get is an unpaid internship. So that's also, to me, social injustice. Because why should a young, very talented, competent university graduate not be paid? Just because he's so lucky to work for a big brand and he should be so honored just to be there making coffee for people? That really is not acceptable. So the social non-sustainability is a very wide range of aspects. It's not just the factories. Of course, that's the most terrible part. But also, in everyday, we have had a lot of scandals lately here in Italy of big luxury brands producing in factories that are fully Chinese, where the people working in the factory are not registered as citizens in Italy. They get paid as if they still lived in China. And the Guardia di Finanza, the finance police, discovered these places because looking at the electricity bill, a normal factory would have a peak during the working hours, and then at night you have no electricity working. In these companies, in these factories, the peak was 24/7, which means that people were working all the time, sleeping in the factory, terrible conditions. And they found, Valentino, Armani, Alviero Martini producing in these places. So you can still say that it's made in Italy because technically, geographically, it's made in Italy. But if you bring the workers here and treat them like dirt, and then you can still say it's made in Italy, I find that very offensive. More offensive than fast fashion. Because fast fashion, they're bad. I mean, it's like, they're bad. Everybody knows. But luxury, they've been trying to sell us this like, oh, we're the best. We're, craftsmanship and quality. And then you discover that even in regular Italian factories, they squeeze so much the owners of these factories to give them the lowest possible price, for then selling the same bag that they buy for 30 euros at 5,000 euros in their shop, and the owner of the factory can barely survive. That's all wrong. It's so wrong. It makes me very angry. So the students have to learn about all this stuff, and they have to get indignated. You know, you have to morally think that you don't want to be part of a system that doesn't respect human beings. That's it.
Thank you, Marina. You made lots of valid points here, especially in the internship side, because we know schools in Milan or Italy cost for a section more than 20,000, 30,000 euros.
Exactly.
And the energy you put into the whole process, it's ginormous to work free as for an intern. So it's not just the manufacturers. It also boils down to everyone.
Yeah.
Really, not just in the fashion industry, but even at work and everything. I think it covers the whole business line. Okay. So Martina, I have another question for you. How can we empower the next generation of designers and entrepreneurs to see ethics and sustainability as not just an extra add-on to their company, but the foundation of their business?
Firstly, with a high education path accessible to all of them, because not all universities and institutes focused on fashion or design have a focus on sustainability. Or, for example, some of them have focus on sustainable materials that are a very important part of a good sustainability strategies, but then we need a more holistic approach. Obviously, we are not saying that the poor designer need to be transformed also in a sustainability manager. No, but having a certain kind of mindset for being able to imagine and be aware of what is going on in the world, what is happening, the frameworks, and so on. So investing and supporting them in economic, accessible universities and educational path. They can spend a lot of money for attending a business school. So education should be accessible, economically accessible to all of them. And from one end. To the other hand, we need to continue make joint efforts to support them in achieving their sustainability dreams. I'm sharing this saying with lots of sorrow that different Italian designers with a strong focus on sustainability last year, 2 years ago, closed their business. Some of them were friends of mine with amazing, beautiful products because of economics. So we need a stronger business angels community, a stronger investor community to give space of opportunities to these guys, these talents. It's not possible that just business as usual proposals continue to make money and doing business with the same logic we already know, exploiting people, human rights, polluting, and so on. We need to concretely invest in talents. Investing in talents means put money at their services. This is very important as a global community to support them in access to education and economic opportunities.
But also, if I may, the main problem with these designers is that the buyers and the shops that buy their collection take sometimes, if they're lucky, 30 days to be paid, otherwise 60, 90, 120. And that is also it should be illegal, because a young designer cannot sustain like an artisan. I worked for a long time with Altro Mercato in the fair trade way, and we used to pay 50%. When we would place an order, 50% was paid right away, because we would finance the production. And then when the production was delivered, once it was checked that everything was okay, you immediately pay the rest of the money. In regular fashion, shop owners are really bad because they don't pay. And if a designer asks to be paid 50% in advance, they will say, I'd rather not buy your collection. And so I think that we have to point fingers where fingers should be pointed. And so I think that the shops are very, they're bad. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe one day you would have a law that could actually help, or if the whole system in general is built on a possible law to balance the cost of production,
Yeah.
or the minimum wage in general. So maybe in that way, it could actually help the sustainable brands not to overpay or feel like they're paying a lot for something that should be normal to pay. So I think also the government has to also sit down and think about the minimum wage for each country, and not just the country, for each sector, because I don't know if in Italy the minimum wage is by sector by sector. Yeah. So if that is being adjusted or put at probably a normal just one single wage, minimum wage, maybe that could help.
Wages in Italy are the lowest. We're below Bulgaria and Malta. And the prices have been rising constantly, and wages have been lowering constantly. So we are not a good example at all. And then they complain that the young minds go abroad. Where else are they supposed to go to make make money? Not here. Martina, do you agree?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah,
It's disgusting.
it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh dear. Okay.
Oh dear.
we just hope and pray. Maybe.
Yeah. I don't think that's enough. Unfortunately.
Okay. So, Dr. Benai, for you, the social and environmental responsibility with fair trade approach, does it ensure transparency and traceability for sustainable businesses?
See, I clearly told that there are three approaches that has been embedded with the sustainability. So one is people talk about people, product, and profit. Another is social, environmental, and economical aspect. So in this supply chain business, as you said that the supply chain is quite longer. So T1 people only want to know. Now with the legislation, people want to go down to T2, T3, T4, and T5. And there, the social obligations and social magnification is more impactful. So as Martina and Marina has clearly described that, if the below you go, so consumer is the top of the pyramid, and you have buyer, retailer there, the second pyramid, and the third pyramid, if you look into the T1, which is the final finished manufacturer. So these three has important role to understand what is below the pyramid. And the below pyramid is the approach where you have seen fabric, yarn, or the collectors in case of recycle manufacturers. So they are really impactful, and that's what we saw them in different lenses. So one of the example for our certification is a big challenge that how is your sampling happens. Is it a right sampling to protect the rights of the workers or the wages of the workers? So you talk about wages. So there is a minimum living wages, and there is called minimum support wages. So there are different method of calculation of living wages, and we are just confused with many aspects of the population that always the preferred way that we should pay the minimum to the supply chain, whether the current problem is solving them or not solving them. One school of thought, they believe that you are doing something not up to the mark. But another school of thought is telling that if I do not give something, then they will be somewhere. So with these two school of thought, I think we are all, as Marina said, that education is a very important parameters at all stakeholder stage. It is not only the consumers, not only the stakeholders, not only buyers. And Martina clearly told that there are big gap between the common understandings, that what is the expectation, what is called humanitarian, what is called ethical approach, what is called conscious approach. So looking to this, I think social sector is quite vulnerable, right? It has got a lot of interpretations. So you have Asia and Africa, which looks to be a production of manpower and production of raw materials. And you have got Europe and the other parts of the continent like America, Latam, and you have those continents which are the consumers, buyers continent. So we need to prepare a balance in terms of understanding the consumer behavior and educating the consumer that what you pay the price is a sustainable price, that we do that. And sustainability should come to every people, even the consumer. If I use this garment one more time than the required, I am fed up with this color for certain time, or it has not been worn out, it has not been, nothing has happened to this, and I take a conscious decision, no, I need another garment. So if I change my decision by taking one step ahead, another usage, I do a lot of contribution to sustainability, because it takes time to grow some fibers or collect some of the materials that is lost. So we are every day we are changing our clothes and we are throwing it, and we don't know how the circularity happens. So it's a consciousness of all these people to talk about social and environmental impact. Environmental impact is not with that what SDG goals is, that it is beyond SDG goals. Take example of any chemicals fall on the directly on the ground. Take a chemical that goes to a farmer's nose when he sprays. Take a chemical which goes to directly to the underground. These are all direct poisons that happens, and that impact will be much more higher than you talk of slow poisoning. So I think we need to have education throughout the supply chain, throughout the ecosystem, and we need to have a conscious decision that what is right and what is wrong, and that impactful decision will take us more sustainable way of approach to deal with the situations.
Okay, that's interesting. So I have just one final question, then we close the section. So I'm opening the question to everyone. Anyone could answer it. Because now we have many brands who are labeled eco-friendly and ethical on their clothing garments. How can consumers tell the difference between the real social responsibility and marketing tricks?
Well, in theory, one thing with this digital passport should give some information, but also you have apps like Good on You, Renoon, and there's many more. I don't know all of them. That if you like a brand, you could put in the name of the brand, and it gives you an idea of how this brand is doing on social, environmental, etc., etc. So there are ways to investigate. And before going out and buying, you should always find out, investigate, get information.
And to add further that brands are now open to put their ESG report, environmental, social, and governance report, or GRI report, Green Report Initiative, on their public platform. And one should read what are their sustainable index with respect to their social and environmental commitment.
Yeah.
You are mute, I think, Naomi.
Sorry, excuse me. So, Martina, do you, in your own opinion, what do you think about this? Like,
I agree with both of them. Let me say that we should follow also NGOs campaigns that sometimes do in-depth investigation related to some brands, and maybe they can discover more on some not responsible conduct. And for the moment, too much responsibility on people. So I hope this will be better in the next few
Yes.
years. You should be very committed to discover. And sometimes you make errors. I do. Store managers hate me when I'm here for buying something, because it's 2 hours of a lot of questions, blah 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 in research. But you can spend a lot of this time, and not all of us have a kind of mindset. So institutions should protect users and consumers.
okay, so definitely the digital passports would be of great help. So you don't the store managers don't kick you out of the store.
Yeah. Hopefully, if it's not in the radar of simplification, if it's remain out from the radar.
Oh, okay.
So still continue pushing and protecting what we have.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, that will work. So I would like to thank each one of you for taking part in this section, and I really appreciate for taking out your time to educate us in the different aspects and all. So thank you, everyone, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Help our planet with this first step. Follow Friend of the Sea and Friend of the Earth across our social media. Like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your follow and subscription helps us spread the sustainability message to everyone. Let's build a better world together as sustainable friends.